Shut your mouth before I shut it for you, girl!
A white cop screaming in a black woman's face.
Ow!
Faith Owens, 44, 15 years in law enforcement, pulled over on a quiet road for nothing. 3 officers stood nearby. Nobody stepped in.
Get your hands off me.
She didn't move, eyes locked on his. His face twisted, veins bulged on his neck, jaw tight, eyes bloodshot. Took one step back. Slap. The crack echoed across the roadside. Faith's head snapped sideways. One officer looked away, another froze. Faith touched her cheek, tasted blood, then looked him straight in the eye. What happened next destroyed a cop's career, exposed an entire sheriff's department, and triggered a federal investigation. Damn. But before that satisfying moment, let me take you back to where this all started. But let's rewind. Because before Faith Owens was standing on that roadside with blood on her lip, she was having the most ordinary Saturday of her life. 5:15 in the morning. The alarm buzzed softly on the nightstand. Faith reached over and silenced it before the second ring. Old habit. 15 years of early shifts had wired her body to wake before the sun. She swung her legs off the bed, bare feet on cool hardwood. The house was still dark, still quiet, the kind of silence that only exists before the world remembers you. She moved through the hallway without turning on the lights. She didn't need them. She'd walked this path 1,000 times. Past the family photos lining the wall, past her daughter's old bedroom, now an office, past the bathroom where her husband Derek's reading glasses sat on the sink. The kitchen smelled like the coffee she'd set to brew the night before. Rich, dark, a little too strong, the way she liked it. She poured a cup, sat at the counter, and opened her tablet. Department briefings, staffing reports, budget reviews. The kind of paperwork nobody thinks about when they picture a police chief. But this was the job. Not the badge, not the sirens. The job was this: reading, planning, solving problems before they became headlines. Faith Owens had been Ridgemont County's police chief for exactly 21 days. The first black woman to hold that title in the county's 130-year history. Let that sink in. 130 years. And it took until now. Her appointment hadn't been quiet. Half the department respected her record. The other half couldn't get past the color of her skin. Anonymous complaints hit the city council the same week she was sworn in. Someone left a note on her office door that read, "Diversity hire." She took it down, threw it in the trash, and got back to work. That was Faith. No drama, no speeches, just work. Derek walked into the kitchen around 6:30. Tall, gentle eyes. A high school principal who graded papers the way Faith read crime reports, with a cup of coffee and zero tolerance for nonsense. "Day off," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Actual day off. No emails, no calls. Just you and your mom." Faith smiled. "I'll try." "You'll fail," he said. "But I love you for pretending." She laughed, the kind of laugh that fills a kitchen. Warm, easy, real. She grabbed her keys, her jacket, and her wallet. Her badge sat on the counter by the fruit bowl. She looked at it for a second. Then she slid it into her jacket pocket. Force of habit. Even on a day off, she never left home without it. No uniform today. No department SUV. Just a dark blue sedan, a pair of jeans, a white blouse, and a woman going to visit her mother across the county line. Now here's the thing about Ridgemont County. It's the kind of place that looks peaceful from the highway. Green fields, old churches, family diners with hand-painted signs. But underneath all that, tension. The kind that doesn't make noise until it explodes. The county was mostly white and working class. But in the last decade, more Black and Latino families had moved in. And with that came friction. Not from everyone, but from enough people to make the air feel different.
The sheriff's department had racked up complaints like parking tickets, racial profiling, excessive force, illegal searches. 11 formal complaints in 2 years, mostly from Black residents. And every single one had been investigated and dismissed by Sheriff Dale Pearson's office. Every single one. That's the soil this story grows from. Now let's talk about the man on the other side of this. Sergeant Bryce Callahan. 38. 12 years on the force. The kind of cop who confused authority with power and power with permission. That Saturday afternoon, Callahan was cruising a back road near the county line with his partner, Deputy Lance Whitmore. Windows down, country radio low. Callahan had his sunglasses on, one wrist draped over the wheel. He nodded toward a row of houses. Another block, another barbecue, another noise complaint by 9. Whitmore gave a short, nervous laugh. He didn't push back. He never did. Then Callahan saw it. A dark blue sedan. A Black woman behind the wheel. Driving a clean car through what he considered his part of the county. He watched her pass. She wasn't speeding, wasn't swerving. Her signal worked. Her plates were visible. None of that mattered. Callahan flipped on his lights. Faith saw the lights before she heard the siren. A quick flash of red and blue in her rearview mirror, then the short whoop of a patrol car pulling her over. She glanced at her speedometer. 38 in a 40 zone. No reason. No violation. Nothing. But Faith Owens didn't panic. She'd been here before. Not as a chief, not as an officer. As a Black woman in America. She signaled right. Pulled to the shoulder, slowly. Parked near a streetlight, deliberate, because she knew visibility mattered. She rolled her window down, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and waited. This is what they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you that a routine traffic stop can become a death sentence, depending on the color of your skin. They don't teach you the mental checklist. Hands visible, voice calm, no sudden movements, don't reach for anything, don't argue, don't give them a reason. Faith knew the checklist by heart, not because she'd read it, because she'd lived it. Callahan's cruiser sat behind her for a full minute before he stepped out. That was intentional. Let the driver sit. Let the nerves build. Let them wonder. It was a power move, and Callahan had used it 100 times. He walked toward her car, slowly. Boots crunching on gravel. Belt jangling with the weight of a holstered pistol, a taser, handcuffs, and a radio. He didn't walk like a man approaching a routine stop. He walked like a man approaching something he already owned. He tapped the roof of her car twice with his knuckle. Hard, metallic, unnecessary. Then he leaned into the window, sunglasses still on, gum rolling between his teeth. He didn't greet her, didn't introduce himself, just shined his flashlight directly in her face, even though the sun hadn't fully set. License and registration. Faith handed them over, calmly, smoothly, no fumbling. May I ask why I was pulled over, officer? Callahan didn't look at her. He studied the license like it was a piece of evidence, flipped it over, held it up to the light, took his time. Faith
Owens, he read aloud. This your current address? Yes. He glanced at the road ahead, then back at her. You seem a little far from home, Faith. It's Ms. Owens, she said. Polite, firm, not aggressive, just correcting. He ignored it completely, didn't even blink. I pulled you over because you were swerving across the center line.
Faith's hands stayed on the wheel. Her pulse stayed even. She knew, with absolute certainty, that she had not been swerving. She'd driven this road 100 times. She could drive it blindfolded. I was not swerving, officer. I've been in my lane the entire time. Callahan pulled his sunglasses down, just enough to look over them. The smirk was back. Are you telling me what I saw? I'm telling you what happened. He pushed the sunglasses back up, straightened, stepped back from the window. And that's when his whole demeanor changed. The casual arrogance was gone. What replaced it was something colder, harder. The look of a man who'd just been challenged and didn't plan on losing. Step out of the vehicle. Faith took a breath. She knew her rights. She knew she didn't legally have to comply with that order during a standard traffic stop unless there was a safety concern. But she also knew something else. She knew what happened to black people who said no. So she opened the door, slowly, stepped out, stood beside her car. The evening air was warm. The asphalt still held the heat of the afternoon sun. She could smell fresh-cut grass from a nearby field and the faint chemical bite of exhaust from Callahan's idling cruiser. Hands on the hood. She placed her hands flat on the car. The metal was hot under her palms, gritty with road dust. She could feel the faint vibration of the engine ticking as it cooled. Callahan stood behind her, close, too close. She could feel his shadow. Where are you coming from? Home. Where are you going? To visit my mother. You have any drugs in the car? No. You been drinking? No. You sure about that? I'm sure. He circled around to face her, leaned against the cruiser with his arms crossed, studied her the way you'd study an animal behind glass. Here's what was killing him. She wasn't scared. He expected fear, trembling hands, a shaky voice, maybe tears. That's what he was used to. That's what gave him the rush. But Faith gave him nothing. Her voice was level. Her eyes were steady. Her answers were short, clear, and unshakable. And every second of her composure made him angrier. Because to a man like Callahan, a calm black woman wasn't cooperating. She was defying. Deputy Lance Whitmore stood about 15 feet away, hands on his belt, eyes scanning up and down the road. He hadn't said a word since they stepped out of the cruiser. He was 28, 4 years on the force, and in every one of those 4 years, he had watched Callahan push boundaries, bend rules, and cross lines. And he had never once opened his mouth. Not because he agreed, but because staying silent was easier than being brave. Callahan radioed in Faith's plates. The response came back in under a minute. Clean. No warrants, no prior offenses, no flags, nothing. For any reasonable officer, that would have been the end of it. Hand back the license, say, "Have a nice evening," walk away. But Callahan wasn't a reasonable officer. He walked back to Faith, stood right in front of her, close enough that she could smell the spearmint gum on his breath. "I'm going to search your vehicle." Faith didn't hesitate. "I don't consent to a search. I'm not asking for your consent. I smell marijuana coming from your car. There was no marijuana. There had never been marijuana. Faith didn't smoke. The car smelled like leather cleaner and the vanilla air freshener hanging from her mirror. But I smell marijuana was the oldest trick in the playbook. 4 words that gave a cop the power to tear your life apart.
Faith kept her voice steady. There are no drugs in my vehicle, officer. I do not consent to a search. Callahan stepped closer. His chest was inches from hers now, invading her space, daring her to flinch. I didn't ask what you consent to. He turned and waved toward the road. A second patrol car that had been parked down the shoulder rolled forward. 2 more officers stepped out, both white, both young, both looking at Callahan for direction.
4 officers now, surrounding one woman on a quiet road in the middle of nowhere. The power imbalance wasn't subtle. It was suffocating. Callahan pointed at Faith like she was a suspect in a lineup. We've got a non-compliant driver. Possible narcotics. Non-compliant. That word. Faith knew exactly what it meant in this context. It meant she'd said no. It meant she'd asked questions. It meant she hadn't been afraid enough. She turned to face Callahan directly. Her voice didn't waver. I've identified myself. I've cooperated with your questions. My plates are clean. Your search has no probable cause. I'm asking you, for the record, to document this interaction. Callahan tilted his head, looked at her the way a cat looks at something small. You've got a real mouth on you, don't you? I'm exercising my rights, Sergeant. He turned to Whitmore, spoke loud enough for Faith and every officer on that road to hear. Always the same with these people. Give them an inch and they think they run the place. These people, he said it casually, like it was nothing, like it was just a fact. And that's the moment the racial dimension of this stop became undeniable. Not that it hadn't been there from the start. It had, from the second Callahan saw a black woman driving a clean car through his territory. But now it was out loud, on record, in front of witnesses.
Faith said nothing. She didn't need to. The dash cam was rolling. The evening was still. And every word Callahan said was being recorded by the same system that was supposed to protect him. He just didn't know it was about to destroy him. Callahan didn't wait for Faith's consent. He never planned to. He snapped his fingers at Whitmore. Search it. Whitmore hesitated. Just for a second, a flicker of something behind his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or guilt. But it passed. It always passed with Whitmore. He walked to Faith's car, opened the driver's side door, and started looking. Faith stood with her hands still on the hood. The metal had started to cool now. The sun was dropping behind the tree line. Long shadows stretched across the road like dark fingers reaching for something they couldn't quite touch. She watched Whitmore go through her car the way you'd watch someone walk through your home with muddy boots. Every opened compartment was a violation. Every drawer pulled was a line crossed. Glove box first. Registration. Insurance papers. A small leather Bible with a cracked spine. Reading glasses in a floral case. Whitmore set each item on the passenger seat like he was cataloging evidence from a crime scene. There was no crime. Back seat next. A reusable grocery bag. A water bottle. A folded sweater. Nothing. Then the trunk. Whitmore popped it open. A gym bag with workout clothes, a change of shoes, and a manila folder, thick, official, stamped with the Ridgemont County Police Department seal. Inside were department documents, transfer requests, staffing evaluations, the kind of paperwork only a senior officer would carry.
Whitmore glanced at the folder. He didn't open it. Didn't read it. He was moving too fast, too eager to be done, too focused on getting back to Callahan's good side. If he'd taken 5 seconds to flip that folder open, this whole story might have ended differently. But he didn't. He closed the trunk, walked back to Callahan, shook his head. Nothing.
Callahan's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared. He wasn't relieved. He was annoyed. Because finding nothing meant he was wrong. And being wrong in front of 4 officers and a dash cam was not something Bryce Callahan could accept. Faith spoke. Calm. Measured. Like a woman reading a legal document out loud. You've searched my vehicle without probable cause and without my consent. I want this interaction documented in full. Callahan turned to her slowly. Oh, it'll be documented all right. That should have been the end. Clean car, clean record, clean plates, no drugs, no weapons, no warrants. Any sane officer would have handed back the license and walked away. But Callahan wasn't done. He was just getting started. He began circling Faith. Slowly. The way a dog circles something it's about to bite. His boots scraped the gravel with each step. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The rhythm was deliberate, predatory. You sure you're not on something? Your pupils look dilated. I'm not on anything. Your hands are shaking. My hands are fine. See, that's what someone on something would say. He stopped in front of her, pulled out his radio, keyed it with a click. Dispatch, requesting K-9 unit to my location. Mile marker 12. Route 9. Possible narcotics. Faith's stomach tightened. Not from fear, from recognition. She knew this playbook. She'd seen it used against countless people in her career. Request a dog. Delay the stop. Stretch 30 minutes into 2 hours. Make the person sweat. Make them break. The K-9 unit arrived 11 minutes later. A German shepherd named Duke, led by an officer who didn't make eye contact with Faith once. The dog circled the car, sniffed the tires, sniffed the doors, sniffed the trunk. No alert, no signal, nothing.
Callahan dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Dogs miss things sometimes. That's not how K-9 units work, and every officer on that road knew it. He turned back to Faith. I'm detaining you for further investigation. On what grounds? Obstruction. You've been non-compliant since the second I walked up to your window. I have complied with every lawful request, Sergeant. I have not obstructed anything. That's your opinion. That's the law.
Callahan's eyes narrowed. Something shifted in his face. The casual cruelty was gone. What replaced it was darker, harder. The look of a man who was no longer playing a game, but fighting a war. Are you telling me how to do my job? I'm telling you what my rights are. Your rights. He repeated it slowly, like the words tasted wrong. You want to talk about rights? You're standing on the side of my road, in my county, talking back to me like you're somebody. You're not somebody. You're just another problem I have to deal with before dinner. Faith held his gaze, didn't blink. Am I under arrest? Not yet. Keep talking and we'll get there. Then I'd like to make a phone call. Callahan laughed, short, sharp, like a bark. This isn't a hotel, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The second time he'd used that word, dripping with contempt, loaded with every assumption he'd ever made about what a black woman was worth. Faith reached slowly toward her jacket. Her phone was in the right pocket. She moved deliberately, no sudden movement, exactly the way she'd been trained. I'm reaching for my phone, officer. Just my phone. Callahan grabbed her wrist, hard. His fingers dug into her skin like a vice. She could feel the bones shift under the pressure.
Hands where I can see them.
I just told you. I'm reaching for my phone. I don't care what you told me. Did I say you could move? You don't have to give me permission to— Shut up! He yanked her arm, twisted it, spun her around so she was facing the car again. His hand was on the back of her neck now, pressing her forward. The metal of the hood was cool against her collarbone. And then she said it, the sentence that broke him. I want to speak to your supervisor. Right now. That was it. Not a threat, not an insult, a request. A lawful, constitutional, reasonable request that every citizen in America has the right to make. Callahan released her neck. She straightened up, turned around to face him. His face was red, not pink, red. The veins on his neck pulsed like ropes under his skin. His eyes were glassy and wide. His breathing was shallow and fast. His hand was shaking, not from fear, from rage. Supervisor, he spat the word. You want a supervisor? You don't get to demand anything. You don't get to ask for anything. You're nothing. You hear me? You're absolutely nothing. Faith didn't look away. I have the right to— Slap. Open palm. Full force. The sound cracked through the evening air like a gunshot. Faith's head snapped to the left. Her body followed. She stumbled sideways, caught herself on the car door. Her cheek burned like it was on fire. Her ear rang, a high, thin note that swallowed every other sound. She tasted copper, felt the warm trickle of blood from where her lip had split against her teeth. The road went silent, dead silent. The crickets stopped. The wind stopped. Even the radio in Callahan's cruiser seemed to hold its breath. Whitmore's mouth fell open. One of the backup officers took a half step back like he'd been pushed. The other just stared, frozen, his hand halfway to his radio. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 5 seconds of silence. The longest 5 seconds on that road. Faith steadied herself. She pressed her palm against the car, pushed herself upright, touched her cheek, looked at the blood on her fingertips. Then she turned, slowly, deliberately, and faced Callahan. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She looked at him with an expression that he would remember for the rest of his life. Not anger, not pain, certainty. And she said one sentence, low, steady, cold as steel. You just made the worst mistake of your career. Callahan laughed, but the laugh was thin, hollow. That a threat? Add it to the report. Callahan turned to Whitmore. The red in his face was fading. The adrenaline was settling. And somewhere beneath the rage, something else was creeping in. Something unfamiliar. Something he hadn't felt in 12 years on the force. Doubt. Cuff her, he said, but his voice cracked on the second word. Faith didn't resist. She extended her wrists, slowly, calmly. Her face was stone, her lip was bleeding, her cheek was swelling, but her eyes were perfectly still. Whitmore approached with the handcuffs. His hands were shaking. The metal clinked softly as he fumbled with the latch. Before he could close them, Faith spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost conversational, like she was ordering coffee. Before you do that, Deputy, I need you to reach into my left jacket pocket. Callahan snapped. We'll search whatever we want. It's not a weapon, Faith said. She didn't look at Callahan. She looked at Whitmore, directly into his eyes. It's identification, official identification, and I strongly suggest you look at it. Something in her tone stopped everything. Not the words themselves, the certainty behind them, the absolute, unshakable calm of a woman who knew exactly what was about to happen. Whitmore looked at Callahan. Callahan waved dismissively. "Go ahead, let's see her little ID." Whitmore reached into Faith's left jacket pocket. His fingers touched leather. He pulled out a small black case. Standard size, nothing special about it from the outside. He flipped it open, and the entire world on that roadside changed.
Oh, hell no. Nah, just imagine that's you. You ask for a supervisor, a basic right. And this man slaps you in front of other cops. And nobody does a thing. How would you feel? Now keep watching. Gold. That was the first thing Whitmore saw, a flash of gold under the fading sunlight. He looked closer. His brain needed a second to process what his eyes were telling him. A badge. Not a driver's license, not a concealed carry permit, not a business card. A badge. Polished, engraved, official. 5 points. Eagle on top. The seal of the Ridgemont County Police Department in the center. And underneath the seal, 2 lines etched in clean black letters. Police Chief Faith Owens. Whitmore's hand started to shake, not a little, a full tremor that ran from his fingertips up through his wrist and into his shoulder. The badge case rattled in his grip like a leaf in a storm. He looked up at Faith, then down at the badge, then back at Faith. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Callahan was standing 6 feet away, arms crossed, smirk still on his face. He hadn't seen it yet.
"Well," Callahan said, "what's Little Miss Attitude got? Library card? Food stamps?" Whitmore turned the badge around, slowly, held it up so Callahan could see. The smirk didn't just disappear. It collapsed, like a building losing its foundation. 1 second it was there. The next, every muscle in Callahan's face went slack. His arms dropped to his sides. His skin, which had been flushed red with rage 30 seconds ago, drained to the color of old milk. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His eyes darted from the badge to Faith's face, back to the badge, back to Faith. Like a man trying to solve a puzzle that just destroyed his life. The 2 backup officers stepped closer to see what Whitmore was holding. One of them, the younger one, whispered 2 words under his breath. "Oh my God." The other one took a step back, then another, like the badge was radioactive. Silence. Not the silence of a quiet road, the silence of a world being rearranged. The silence of 5 men realizing, all at once, that the woman they had humiliated, searched, threatened, and struck was the single most powerful law enforcement official in their county. 5 seconds of that silence. 10. 15. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Faith broke it. She didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't raise her voice even a fraction. She spoke with the calm, precise authority of a woman who had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this kind of moment. Sergeant Bryce Callahan, badge number 4412. Callahan flinched at the sound of his own name. "You have conducted an illegal traffic stop based on fabricated probable cause. You have performed an unlawful search of my vehicle without consent and without legal justification. You have used racially coded language in the presence of fellow officers. You have physically assaulted a civilian.
and you have committed battery against the Chief of Police of Ridgemont County." She recited every charge from memory. No notes, no hesitation. Each violation landed like a hammer strike. Clean, precise, devastating. Callahan's mouth moved again. This time, sound came out, but barely. Chief, I didn't know." "You didn't know I was your boss." Faith's voice didn't waver. "But that shouldn't matter, Sergeant, because you shouldn't treat anyone like this. Not a chief, not a teacher, not a student, not a mother driving to see her family. No one." She turned to Whitmore. Her eyes dropped to the handcuffs still dangling from his left hand. "Uncuff me. Now." Whitmore fumbled. His hands were shaking so badly that it took him 3 tries to find the keyhole. The cuffs clicked open, fell away. Faith rubbed her wrists. Red marks circled them like bracelets. She pulled her phone from her right pocket, the one Callahan had grabbed her wrist to stop her from reaching. She dialed 2 numbers. The first call. Captain Eleanor Graves, Internal Affairs. "Eleanor, it's Faith. I need you at mile marker 12 on Route 9. Full IA team. I'm placing Sergeant Callahan under administrative investigation, effective immediately. Secure all dash cam and body cam footage from every officer on scene." She hung up. Dialed again. The second call. Derek. "Baby, I'm fine. I'll explain everything when I get home. I love you." She ended the call, slid the phone back into her pocket, turned to Callahan. He looked smaller now, like the uniform had been holding him together, and now it was just fabric. His hands hung at his sides, his shoulders were rounded, his eyes were fixed on the ground. "Hand over your badge and your firearms, Sergeant. You were suspended pending investigation." Callahan's head snapped up, a flash of the old defiance. "You can't! The sheriff!" "I just did." Faith cut him off without raising her voice. "And if Sheriff Pearson has a problem with that, he can take it up with the district attorney." Callahan unclipped his badge, slowly. His fingers trembled as he pulled the pin from his shirt. He set it on the hood of his cruiser, then his service weapon. He placed it next to the badge with both hands, like a man laying down something much heavier than a gun. Faith turned to the backup officers. "Secure the footage, every dash cam, every body cam. If a single frame is missing, I'll hold each of you personally responsible." They moved fast, faster than they'd moved all evening. Faith stood alone on the roadside for a moment. The sun had dropped below the tree line now. The sky was purple and orange. The lights on Callahan's cruiser were still spinning, painting everything in red and blue. She touched her cheek. The swelling had started. The blood on her lip had dried. She breathed in, held it, let it out. Then she waited for Eleanor Graves to arrive. Captain Eleanor Graves arrived in 14 minutes. She drove an unmarked black sedan. No sirens, no lights, just speed. Behind her, a white department van carrying 2 internal affairs investigators and a forensic tech. Graves stepped out of her car and took exactly 3 seconds to read the scene. Faith standing tall, with a swollen cheek and blood dried on her lip. Callahan, pale and badgeless, leaning against his cruiser like a man waiting for a bus that would never come. Whitmore, sitting on the bumper of his patrol car, head in his hands, staring at the ground between his boots. Graves was 52, silver hair cut short. 26 years in law enforcement, the last 8 running internal affairs. She had investigated corrupt officers, dirty unions, and cover-ups that went all the way to City Hall.
Nothing surprised her anymore. But when she saw the welt forming on Faith's cheekbone, her jaw tightened. She walked to Faith first, spoke quietly. "Are you all right, Chief?" Faith nodded. "I will be. Do your job, Eleanor. Every detail." Graves pulled out her phone, photographed the welt on Faith's cheek from 3 angles, photographed the red marks on her wrists from the handcuffs, photographed the blood on her lip. Clinical, thorough, every image time-stamped and geotagged. Then she turned to Callahan. He tried the apology first. The words spilled out fast and messy, like a man bailing water from a sinking boat.
"Chief, look, I'm sorry. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't recognize you. If I'd known who you were, I would never—" "Would never what?" Faith said. "Would never have slapped me? Would never have searched my car? Would never have called me a—" She stopped. Let the silence finish the sentence. "That's the problem, Sergeant. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry for who you did it to." Callahan opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. The excuse came next. "I thought you were reaching for a weapon. It was a split-second decision. Officer safety." "I announced I was reaching for my phone," Faith said. "Clearly. Twice. It's on your dash cam audio. You don't get to rewrite what happened when the camera was rolling." Callahan shifted tactics. The deflection. "I've got a clean record, Chief. 15 commendations. Ask anyone in the department. You've also got 11 civilian complaints, all from people of color, all dismissed by Sheriff Pearson's office without a proper investigation. I've read your file, Sergeant. Every page." Something flickered across Callahan's face. Not remorse. Fear. The fear of a man who just realized that the system he'd been hiding behind was about to collapse on top of him. One last card. The veiled threat. He lowered his voice, leaned in slightly. "The sheriff's going to hear about this." Faith didn't flinch. "I'm counting on it." Graves stepped between them. "That's enough, Sergeant. You'll have plenty of time to talk, with a lawyer present." She turned to Whitmore next. He hadn't moved from the bumper. His elbows were on his knees. His face was gray. Faith walked over to him. Her tone was different. Not softer, but more measured, like a teacher addressing a student who had failed a test they should have passed. "Deputy Whitmore, you stood there and watched your partner assault a woman. You performed an illegal search of my vehicle on his orders. You heard him use racially charged language, and you said nothing. Not one word." Whitmore looked up. His eyes were red. His voice cracked. I should have." "Yes, you should have." Faith let that sit. "You're also suspended pending review." She paused, looked at him for a long moment, and then she said something that hit harder than any charge. "You know what the difference is between you and Callahan? He chose to be cruel. You chose to be silent. And in that moment, Deputy, silence was a choice too." Whitmore's head dropped back into his hands. Graves and her team worked the scene for the next 45 minutes. Every dash cam was pulled, every body cam, except Callahan's, which had been turned off at the start of the stop. That was a separate violation, and Graves noted it with a red flag in her file. Preliminary statements were taken from every officer on scene. The backup officers cooperated immediately. They knew which way the wind was blowing. Callahan and Whitmore were placed in separate vehicles. No handcuffs for either. Not yet. But the back seats of those cars felt like cages just the same. Their patrol cruisers were impounded for forensic review. As the IA van pulled away, Faith stood alone on the shoulder of Route 9. The sky had gone dark. Stars were beginning to appear.
The flashing lights were gone now. The road was quiet again. She touched her cheek one more time. The swelling was worse. The pain had settled into a deep, dull throb. She took a breath, held it, let it go. Then she got in her car, started the engine, and drove home to her husband. The footage hit Captain Graves's desk at 9 the next morning. She watched it alone in her office with the door closed and the blinds drawn. 17 minutes of uninterrupted dashcam video. No cuts, no edits, no gaps. Just raw, unfiltered reality. She watched Callahan pull Faith over for no reason. Watched him shine a flashlight in her face while the sun was still up. Watched him order her out of the car. Watched him circle her like prey. Watched Whitmore search the vehicle without consent. Watched the canine alert on nothing. Watched Callahan grab Faith's wrist. Watched him pin her against the hood. Watched him slap her across the face with an open palm. And then she watched Faith stand back up, look him in the eye, and never once lose her composure. Graves watched it twice. Then she picked up her phone and called the district attorney. By Monday morning, Internal Affairs had opened a formal investigation, not just into Callahan, into the system that created him. Graves pulled Callahan's complete personnel file. What she found wasn't surprising. It was sickening. 11 civilian complaints over 5 years. Every single one filed by a Black or Latino resident. Excessive force, racial profiling, illegal searches, verbal abuse, intimidation. And every single one had been marked investigated, no action required, by the same office. Sheriff Dale Pearson's office. 11 complaints, 11 dismissals. Same signature at the bottom of every report. Graves flagged it immediately. This wasn't just one bad cop. This was a pattern, a system designed to protect officers and bury victims. And the man at the top of that system was the sheriff himself. The investigation expanded. By Wednesday, the story broke. Tanya Bridges was the one who lit the match. 31 years old, investigative journalist at WRMD-TV. She'd been covering police misconduct in Ridgemont County for 2 years, knocking on doors that kept closing in her face. She'd filed 6 FOIA requests in the past 18 months. 5 had been denied or delayed. On Tuesday night, she received an anonymous tip. No name, no return number, just a text message with 4 words. Check the dashcam footage. She filed a 7th FOIA request Wednesday morning. By noon, she had a redacted copy of the video, released with Faith's personal authorization. Bridges aired the footage on the 6 o'clock news that evening. The segment ran 8 minutes. The raw video played with minimal commentary. Bridges let the images speak for themselves. Callahan's voice, the slap, the silence of the other officers, Faith's face, steady, unbroken, bleeding. By 10 o'clock that night, the clip had been viewed 200,000 times online. By Thursday morning, it had crossed 2 million. By Friday, every major news outlet in the country had picked it up. CNN, MS, NBC, The New York Times, The Washington Post, NPR, local papers from coast to coast. The footage played on loop in newsrooms, living rooms, and barbershops across America. The hashtag started Thursday afternoon. Simple, clean, unavoidable. Hashtag Faith Owens. It trended for 3 straight days. Civil rights organizations issued statements within hours. The NAACP called for immediate federal oversight. the ACLU announced it was monitoring the investigation. Local community leaders organized a peaceful vigil outside the Ridgemont County Courthouse that drew over 1,000 people. Sheriff Dale Pearson held a press conference on Friday. It was a disaster. He stood behind a podium with the county seal and a row of flags. His uniform was pressed. His hands were steady. But the sweat on his forehead told the real story. "This is an isolated incident," he said. "One officer, one lapse in judgment. The Ridgemont County Sheriff's Department does not tolerate." A reporter cut him off. "Sheriff, what about the 11 previous complaints against Sergeant Callahan, all dismissed by your office?" Pearson's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Those complaints were investigated thoroughly, and were they? Because we've reviewed the files, and 3 of them have no investigator notes at all, just your signature." Pearson gripped the podium. His knuckles went white. We followed proper procedure in every... Another reporter. "Sheriff, did you personally sign off on dismissing complaints against an officer who was exhibiting a clear pattern of racial targeting?" The press conference lasted 11 minutes. Pearson answered 0 questions satisfactorily. By the time he walked off stage, the calls for his resignation had already started. Then the victims came forward. Darnell Foster was the first, 22 years old, junior at the State University, studying criminal justice. The kind of irony that doesn't need a narrator to point out. 2 years earlier, Darnell had been driving home from a late study session. Callahan pulled him over on the same stretch of Route 9. Same playbook. License and registration. Step out of the vehicle. I smell marijuana. But Darnell's stop didn't end with a slap. It ended with his face pressed into the asphalt and his right wrist fractured during what Callahan called a compliance hold. Darnell spent 6 hours in the emergency room. He filed a complaint with the sheriff's department the next week. Dismissed. No action required. Signed by Dale Pearson. When Darnell saw Faith's footage on the news, he sat on the edge of his bed and cried. Not from sadness, from recognition. The same road, the same cop, the same words, the same system. He called Tanya Bridges that night, told her everything. She recorded the interview and aired it the following Monday. Within 48 hours, 3 more victims came forward, each with a story that echoed the last. Different names, different dates, same officer, same tactics, same outcome. Complaints filed, complaints buried. A class action civil rights lawsuit was filed against the Ridgemont County Sheriff's Department on behalf of all 4 victims. The lead attorney announced it on the courthouse steps, with Darnell standing beside her. Faith met with each victim privately. No cameras, no press releases, just a room, a table, and a woman who looked them in the eye and said what nobody in that department had ever said to them before. I believe you, and this time, it's going to be different. The trial came 6 weeks later. Callahan was charged with assault and battery, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, a federal charge, unlawful search and seizure, and filing a false police report for the fabricated swerving claim. The dashcam footage was the centerpiece. 17 minutes of evidence that no defense attorney could explain away. His lawyer tried. He argued high-stress environment. He argued split-second decision-making. He argued mistaken identity, as if slapping any woman on the side of the road would have been acceptable. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 40 minutes. Guilty. All counts. Sentencing. 36 months in federal prison. Permanent decertification.
meaning Bryce Callahan would never wear a badge again in any state, in any capacity, for the rest of his life. And restitution payments to every victim whose complaint had been buried. Callahan stood motionless as the verdict was read. No smirk, no defiance. Just a man in a suit that didn't fit, staring at a future he had built for himself. Whitmore was charged separately. Accessory to unlawful search. Failure to intervene. He cooperated fully with prosecutors, testified against Callahan, described in detail the culture of silence inside the department, the unwritten rules, the things you didn't report, the things you pretended not to see. His sentence? 18 months probation, mandatory retraining, permanent demotion. He resigned from the department voluntarily 2 days after the trial, told Bridges in an off-camera conversation that he couldn't wear the uniform anymore without seeing Faith's face. And then there was Pearson. The investigation into the sheriff's office took 3 months. What it uncovered was systematic. Pearson hadn't just dismissed Callahan's complaints. He had built a pipeline for burying misconduct. Officers who generated complaints were quietly protected. Victims who pushed back were discouraged, delayed, or ignored until they gave up. Pearson was charged with obstruction of justice and misconduct in office. The evidence was overwhelming. Signed documents, missing files, emails instructing subordinates to keep it quiet. He was forced to resign. He lost his pension. And he faced a separate civil trial from the class action lawsuit that would follow him for years. Judge Carolyn Moore delivered the final word from the bench. She looked at the courtroom, packed with reporters, community members, officers, and 4 victims who had waited years to be heard. And she said something that Tanya Bridges would later call the most important sentence spoken in Ridgemont County in a decade. The badge is a symbol of public trust. When that trust is weaponized against the very people it was meant to protect, the full weight of the law must respond. Today, it has. 6 months later, Faith Owens stood behind a podium at the Ridgemont County Community Center. Every seat taken. People lined the walls, officers in uniform, community members, parents with children on their laps. Tanya Bridges and her camera crew in the back row. Front row, center seat, Derek. Eyes proud, smiling. 2 seats down sat Darnell Foster, clean suit, name badge on his chest. Intern, district attorney's office. The boy who'd had his wrist broken on Route 9 now worked in the building where his abuser was convicted. Faith adjusted the microphone. She didn't talk about herself, didn't talk about the slap. She talked about what came next. Today, I'm announcing a comprehensive reform package for law enforcement in Ridgemont County. Mandatory body camera activation on every shift. Deactivation means automatic suspension. An independent civilian oversight board, 12 members elected by residents, not appointed by the department. Annual implicit bias training. Real programs, real consequences. And an early warning system. 3 complaints in 24 months triggers automatic review. No more buried files. No more looking away. She gripped the podium, looked out at the room. I became a police officer because I believe in justice. Not justice for some, justice for all. And I will spend every day making sure that's not just words on a wall. The applause started slow. Derek stood first, then Darnell, then the whole room.
Faith nodded. Didn't wave, didn't smile for cameras, just nodded. After the event, she walked to her car alone. Evening air cool, crickets humming in the grass. Her badge sat on the passenger seat, gold catching the light. She picked it up, ran her thumb across the engraved letters, clipped it to her belt. She started the engine, pulled onto Route 9, mile marker 12, the same stretch where Callahan slapped her, where he searched her car, where he grabbed her wrist. She drove past it, didn't slow down, didn't look. Eyes forward, hands steady. The road ahead, open, quiet. Hers. Man, this story's fiction. But imagine your Faith. No badge, no title. Just you, on that road, alone. Would anyone believe you? Would anything change? Think about that. Drop your answer in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Next week's story? Even crazier.